This video is going to cover basics of rolling slabs. And what slabs are sheets of clay, and you can use them in hand building projects. You can use them freshly rolled and then they're soft, we'll call them soft slabs. Or you can use them after you've let them sit for a little bit and some of the moisture has left them. Then we can create objects that are a little bit more hard-edged, and we would call those hard slab projects. All right, but all together it's called slabs. So the tools that you're going to be needing to do this at home are a porous surface. I'm going to work on paper today. Please don't work on your countertop or tabletop. It's non-porous. Your clay is going to stick to it. It can possibly damage that surface. Another thing that you're going to need is a rolling pin or something that has a cylindrical form that you can use as a rolling pin. These aren't necessary, but it's helpful if you have something like these slats of wood. They have an even depth to them. We can use these as basically guides so that our slab doesn't get too thick or too thin or unevenly rolled. If you don't have something like these or paint stirrers, you can make up some other things. I've got chopsticks from Takeout. You can basically take these and stack them together and then take some tape, wrap it around, and now when I measure this, it is just slightly over 1/4 of an inch. That's going to make a really decent width slab. These wood ones that I have, that is 1/4 of an inch. But put these together, stack them, tape them, about 1/4 of an inch is good. That's what you want. If you don't have anything like that, maybe you have some cardboard around. I used my ruler and I took a cardboard from my clay box, and I just used a utility knife and cut basically these strips of cardboard. Now, same thing as the chopsticks. I can stack these together, and I'm going to take tape, put 2 of them together to make sure that they don't wiggle as I'm using them. And that's close to the same width as the wood. And they're pretty durable. They hold up pretty well. So long as you don't mash down on them pretty hard. Basically, this is what we're doing. So these serve as guides. So you can DIY this. You can come up with something and make it work for you. Other things that you're just going to need for these projects are a ruler and your knife, as well as your clay, flexible rib, or an old gift card, works the same, your clay cutter, and your clay. All right, so one thing I want to tell you about your clay, I'm using a fresh bag of clay. If you're using some clay that you've already used, don't skip the step of wedging. You still need to wedge it to get those air bubbles out. But if you happen to be working with a fresh bag of clay, you've got some fresh clay around, there's a huge temptation to just cut across your clay and take a chunk off the top. I don't recommend doing that. Your clay goes through a machine called a pug mill, and it has a corkscrew in it. And basically, your clay has memory, and it remembers that corkscrew. And if you cut off the top, there's potential for that memory to be there and for you to get a crack in your work. So what I like to do, what I recommend doing, I got a little mark there, rub that out, is I like to cut going down the lump of clay rather than across it. And I'm going to just take my wire here, and I'm cutting a chunk of clay. It's maybe a 1/2 inch thick, maybe a little more. All right, so get this out of my way because I'm trying to condense my workspace. I don't want clay dust everywhere. And I'm going to take this, and first thing I want to do is I kind of want to pound it down a little bit. I don't want anything that's too thick. I don't want to try to mash it with a rolling pin. I want to gently coax it into shape. So I'm going to take this now, and I'm going to use my guides, my wood pieces. I'm going to put them on either side of my clay. Just make sure you can see everything here. I'm going to put them on either side of my clay. I'm going to take my rolling pin, and I'm just going to use gentle pressure, rolling back and forth, and I, rolled a couple times. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my clay up gently and lay it down gently. You can see I put it in a different orientation. Here, I can show you this too, so just so you can see I'm not lying. This works. And I'm just going to take my hands, I'm going to use it like this. And now, well, you can't quite notice with the bottle, but what I want you to see is that as this goes over here, it's not touching these slats of wood yet. There's space here. So I need to keep stretching. You know you're done with your clay when it gets to that thickness. All right, but I keep flipping it over so it doesn't stick to my paper. Okay, here my rolling pin isn't wide enough. You can freehand it. You don't need those guides. They're nice, they're handy. You don't need them though if you can steadily roll. Okay, so I'm gonna pick it up again, put it down, and put my guides back here. And there, I can see my clay stretched out a bit. Now it looks like it's really not stretching anymore. I want to talk to you also about handling your clay. Notice how when I pick up my clay, it's big swooping motions. I'm running out of space here. I gotta go diagonal. It's not a peeling up, it's a big motion. And that's because I want to prevent the clay from warping on me later. So I'm just gonna go over it one more time. Okay, that looks pretty good. As I go over it, I don't see it stretching out anymore. It feels like my rolling pin is touching these wood slats as I roll. So I've reached the depth that I need for my project, which I'm going to recommend about that 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch or so. If you are rolling on something that had texture, maybe wood, you're going to want to get your rib or your old credit card, gift card, and smooth that texture out. We're actually doing two things. We're smoothing the clay out, but we're also compressing the surface. So I'm going to go in a couple different directions here. Go back to tried and true. And then I'm going to, again, notice how I move. I put my hand under here and I make big motions. I don't curl the clay up. Oh, and you can see my line here. That's from the seam in my paper. Maybe I need to stretch my paper a little bit underneath. Just take that tape off. There we go. But that's all right, I can smooth that out. So I'm compressing the surface. And now if I knew I was gonna do something that had texture in it at that point, I could put something down, roll my rolling pin on top. If I have any stamps or other textures that I wanna put in there, I could put that all over there now. If I was making a bunch of slabs, like if I was doing hard slab projects, I would need more slabs. So what I would do is I'd pick this up, set it aside, put a piece of paper on top, put a couple pieces of newspaper on top of that even, roll another slab, stack that one on top, cover it with some paper, and then wrap the whole thing loosely with some plastic, leave it for about 24 hours to stiffen up. If we were gonna do soft slab work, I'm ready to go right now. Okay, so those are some basic techniques to help you with rolling slabs.